Everybody inside. Welcome, 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 welcome. Here he is. All right, we should be live on the YouTube verse and Twitterverse, and this time I'm actually going to end the show. I got so excited yesterday I forgot to end the show. Hello, everybody. What do you think about the new look?
I like the new look. You're an inspiration, a sartorial inspiration today.
A sartorial, what does that mean? I'm a satire.
You got to keep the dictionary handy these days.
Well, listen, I just found out what neurodiversity is.
So yeah, well, there you go. Good. Learn something new every day, right?
And by the way, Wesley, I think people, I mean, it's such a powerful term just to say I'm neurodiverse, because first of all, for some ignoramus who doesn't know what it is, they'll be like, I better watch what I say or how I act, which is like, but it's a beautiful thing. It just says, hey, I mean, from what I understand, hey, my brain's a little bit different to yours. And that actually makes me quite special, because diversity is a good thing.
Yeah, we all think a little differently, and it's not a binary. It's a spectrum. We all slide through it. Like someone might say, I forget my keys all the time, like where I put them. And that feels like a knock because I should remember, but maybe that's the one thing that you just don't do so well. But let that go.
You're so right. I mean, Wesley, I used to teach at Notre Dame for 15 years, and I used to tell my students, if they didn't appreciate what we're calling neurodiversity now, go out in the faculty parking lot and watch the math professors look for their cars at the end of the day, right? It was like a Monty Python routine, I mean, here are guys who are brilliant in what they do, and don't expect them to do everything equally well, right?
Exactly.
I love the guy at Harvard. I think it was Howard Gardner who identified at one point 7 totally different kinds of intelligence. Like I'm a philosopher. I deal with abstract ideas, but I know guys who are car mechanics and guys who are surgeons who have a 3D intellect that I can't even come close to, right? And it doesn't mean I'm less than them, and it doesn't mean they're less than me. We're just different. And why has it taken humanity tens of thousands of years to come to that important conclusion?
It wasn't until like a few years ago that I realized that people didn't think in 3D. Like they could take an object and rotate it in their brain. I thought that everyone could do that. And that's because I was using myself as a base. And it wasn't until I started exploring that I realized that is a skill. That's something that everybody can do. And so I learned that really, can't everyone do that? Apparently not.
Yeah. Pretty rare. And that's the interesting thing. When I was in graduate school, I noticed that the guys, some of the smartest guys in medical school were also the best guys at home with their carpentry shops and working on an old Chevy in the garage. It writes the same 3D intellect. The guys like me in the philosophy department, it was like, really? You guys can do all that?
Yeah. And like I'm also a system thinker, where someone would say something like, we're going to do this. And then to me, I play it all the way through. Yeah. And I was like, well, how are you going to handle this? They're like, well, we're not there yet. But mentally I'm already there, and I see that that's a big flaw and we need to fix it over here.
Yeah.
So I was almost like that annoying kid in the front row, where the teacher is explaining something. I was like, well, what about, can it do this? They're like, no, can you do this? I'm not there yet. Hold on. It took a while for me to like get past like I was annoying, so I can just get the information to try to learn the way that I can consume information and process it.
Yeah.
How did you discover
his office once and apologize for asking too many questions? He said, no, that's the way you learn. Yeah, Bob, I was going to say something.
Well, I was curious how you, what systems do you use to deal with these different things? I don't know, it just seems somewhat overwhelming.
Yep.
Yeah.
For dyslexia, I use screen readers in order to help read screens for me. Voice to text. My partner helps me sometimes with getting stuff done. And for the ADD, I use like the invention of the smartphone has been amazing. The calendar is my other brain to keep track of things, to-do lists, reminders, timers. Like I have a smartwatch, so like even if I don't have my phone and if I'm off track, it keeps me from missing meetings constantly. And I use a lot of like I have a bill payment service, like pays my bills for me. I don't have to worry about that. All that stuff, all the modern technology things, keeps me from losing track. Also, I have like a notebook that I write things on. I have a giant whiteboard that helps me doodle things so I don't lose it if it comes to me in the moment. A lot of things that just help me just like try to stay on task or remind me what tasks that I forgot to do.
Yeah, cool. Cool.
Wesley,
cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Wesley, it was really
that was
nice
a
meeting
great,
you.
great. Sorry, Joey, go ahead.
No, go ahead, man.
No, man, you go.
So
Okay, fine. I'll
can
go.
relate.
I'm kidding.
It was nice to hear you. I suffer from ADHD as well.
Yeah.
We called it hyperactivity when I was a kid. And so they took me to counselors in grade school. High school, they actually took me to psychologists and psychiatrists. College, the same thing. I never really did that well in school and thought I was relatively stupid until about the age of 30. So I didn't really read a lot for whatever reason. I was a jock and I was popular. And so I had social skills, but they didn't, like my mom said, you're never going to get paid to speak, which turned out to be incorrect. But I share a lot of your beliefs because I went through and I still go through a lot. And I married someone who can joke about it. I've had girlfriends in the past that, how do you even function? Because I can't do certain things. And it drove my mother crazy. And my wife actually understands that my brain just doesn't think the same way that other brains think or other people that she's been with. And she's even had to explain that to her mother because there's certain things in detail orientation I can't do. It's not that I'm trying to be, a rebel or I'm trying to be lazy. I just can't get my arms around, intellectually, I can't get them around a certain piece. And I had to actually, in the business world, I had to actually get to the top so that I could have a job. I ran an ad agency for 20 years and the running joke with my business partners was that I wasn't even able to get a job if I was on the other end of the desk. I didn't have enough qualities. I didn't have the skills to be a creative person, to be a researcher, to be an insights director, to be a project manager. I mean, I was in the ad business. And so I heard everything you said and I'm happy you found yourself. It took me a long time as well. And it's a tough road. And I've dealt with episodic depression as well. So kudos to you for being brave and getting through all this. It was a great story to hear.
And I think race plays a slight, I don't know, slight, but it plays a part of it because I've talked to several people who've had some of my same struggles, but they've had managers who think, well, there's something, that person did something wrong. But because of me, they say there's something wrong with that person. And that difference has been is what really kind of pushed me into a lot of self-loathing and thought that that I would not be accepted because that's something, it's not that I could change, it's something who I am. And that caused me a lot of mental anguish and trauma, frankly.
Oh, I bet.
This after show just never ceases to amaze me. It's different every time. And yet there's a lot of similarities, but I don't know. I just get so much out of this and really, really grateful, Joseph, to you and well, to everybody here, actually. I'm just looking at the list now. And Wesley, your contribution is fantastic. So thanks. It's resonating with me really well today.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Thanks for speaking our heart there, Bob. I'd like to, I don't even have to say thank you because of what he said. But Wesley, I'm interested in, as a supplement to all that, which is enough maybe, what the mechanics were, maybe are, for you when you wrote down the blog that was the hardest blog you ever wrote. Did you use a notebook? Did you use a keyboard?
Oh yeah, I was curious.
Did you have an outline? Did you find revisions difficult? Or did you have to go out for walks? Did you bang your head against the wall? You know, all those things. Yes, or can you
all the above? Yeah. Start off with a thought, putting that into like naming a few points, coming with an outline, come up with a really bad draft, having discussions back and forth with my partner who wrote the final draft for me, and was able to take my words and like twist and massage them a bit and actually make it to really good prose. So that really is like, I used all of the above, and it stressed me, and that took me probably a month and a half to write. So it took a very, very, very long time.
Are you considering putting that into a longer form?
Yes, I'm working with a copywriter right now, who is a fellow dyslexic and ADHD person who is a copywriter, and to do like a more expansive version that will not be released, unfortunately, because of NDAs. My experience within these companies cannot be disclosed. So if you look at what I actually wrote, I don't mention any companies specifically. And I say past companies, which kind of pulls all the companies into a giant bucket, so you can't ever determine which one I'm talking about. And so I had to write it in a very non-specific way, but not make it muddled, which is one of the hardest parts of writing that piece.
Yeah, it makes me think it could even be a great piece of fiction.
Yeah, right. Fictionalized it, right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah.
See, there you go.
There you go.
We also do free consulting here at the After Show.
That's right.
Free.
And we well, for now, Wesley, we've actually had these crazy, again, we'll also just group everyone together and not single out people, but we've had these crazy moments where we're all just playing off each other and riffing. And we can see that, I think Bob mentioned it the first time, that you can see this like light bulb moment in the guests when they're like, oh man, this is gold. And then they start writing notes, and you can see
it's when they look down at their desk. Exactly. Yeah. When they look down, you can tell they're taking notes. It's awesome.
It's such a tell. But the thing I wanted to just add is, isolation is just the killer. I mean, it's feeling. It's a literal and a figurative isolation, right? It's this idea of feeling alone, because sometimes you can feel alone in a crowd. Right. Sometimes you can feel alone. Not sometimes, you can. And I think what this little after show this after show is just this amazing grounding force that brings a group of people together, that, the strangers that care about each other a lot more than they should. And I'll just say at this point of our little after show, we're here every day, and you're welcome. And now you're part of the family, whether you like it or not. A, and B, starting in December, every
You'll be
previous
50.
What?
You'll be 50 in December.
I know. Don't remind me. At the end of December, but every Friday will be a community show. So there'll be 10 people on screen every single Friday now, and just riffing. That becomes the show, and we'll see whether it works or not. But so if you want to kind of come back at any point in time, you can just you'll get a link in the thank you email where you can now sign up for future shows as well, which is kind of a cool way to just keep the dynamic going.
Sweet. That sounds very interesting. Hopefully my current employer approves.
One of the things I loved about the show today, Wesley, was just your honest vulnerability about what you went through. And it reminded me of so many stories throughout history, as recently as Steve Jobs being forced out of Apple and being so depressed he could hardly get out of bed for the first 6 weeks. And he ends up saying, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. It was the beginning of his renewal and the phoenix rising from the ashes, basically, to do the truly great things he was meant to do. And it took me back as far as the 6th century, where this Roman guy named Boethius was so prosperous and everything was going great, and he was from a famous wealthy family. And then all of a sudden everything reverses, and he ends up in a tiny prison cell accused of a crime he didn't commit and sentenced to death. And so he starts this little essay called The Consolation of Philosophy. He starts it complaining, the self-loathing, the world-loathing, the what am I doing here? Why don't they go ahead and kill me? This is all so wrong. And the muses come, the Greek muses who inspire poetry, and they help him complain even more beautifully. And then all of a sudden, philosophy shows up as a beautiful lady. And she points to the muses and says, what are these sluts doing here? Get rid of these people. You don't need to complain better. You need to think better. And she helps him turn around his whole mindset about what he's going through and helps him totally rethink his values and his experiences having gone through this turnaround. And it's one of the most powerful little books in all of human history. So I say that just because it strikes me that some of the best people for thousands of years have gone through some of the worst things that have opened the doors to some of the best things. And their testimonies endure and inspire the rest of us.
Yeah, through adversity, sometimes we find solutions. And, what is NASA's, one of their goals is to find harder problems.
Yeah, right.
And like all of this innovation comes from the struggle. And I think being in that environment, but also having the mindset of trying to figure it out and try to fix it, I think was what helped me. And I think helps others who can persist to get through it, to figure out, okay, now what? Now, what do I try? I know this has failed. What do I try next? And be able to iterate, observe, record, and then do it again with improvements, I think is the mentality that helps move forward. And also, I'm not sure if you heard the saying that Russians see more blues than Americans. Have you heard that before?
No.
It's because Russians actually don't see more blues than Americans. It's just that Russian has two words for blue that are different shades of blue. And so through their youth, through their whole lives, they're taught how to distinguish things because they have a language for it. They're able to symbolize it. They're able to say, this is this and this is that. And I think if you're able to really explore the world and bring in all of these things, you can add to your vocabulary things you didn't know how to articulate, things you didn't have the word for, things you didn't know how to feel. Because you don't, even emotionally, sometimes you need to separate your feelings. Am I sad? Am I depressed? Am I angry?
Mm-hmm.
Once you learn some of that stuff about yourself, then you have the language to be able to distinguish where you are, what you feel, and help have a vision of where you need to go.
Mm-hmm.
That's so helpful. That's so helpful. In our language, it's the kind of the opposite is what I think off the top, because we have so many synonyms for the same word. I mean, so many meanings for the same word. And the synonyms are not quite right. So we get locked into these boxes of what white means, black means, blue means, red means. If we had a different word literally for that wasn't just synonymic, but was, whole worldly, it sounds like that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I think
go, Joseph.
No, I was going to say, I think what Joan's trying to say is that we're lazy, and he'd be right by trying to have to label and oversimplify. I think of two reflections. One of them, Stephen Rubin, you may want to just block your ears. But the first is the poor articulation that our children, that our children do not know how to express themselves like they should. And what I mean by that is, how was school today? Good. You just, you won the Powerball. How does it feel? Good.
Fine.
Really? Good or great? Great. It's like one word, monosyllabic, almost answers. And I don't know why that's the case. Why kids are not communicating it more expressively. The other thing is we are, obviously waiting, and we are at a time. This is the time, Stephen, where you just may want to block your ears for a second. But I do think the lack of vocabulary in our president has hurt everyone, us, but also hurt him by being able to just refer to everything as despicable, disgraceful, whatever the words would be. Sometimes we do need to be able to like qualify even a little bit more rather than be kind of lazy in those responses. And maybe he would have helped himself a little bit more, you know, reaching by being a little bit more articulate and expressive in terms of not just saying it, but maybe why he was saying it. So
Yeah,
I don't
we
want to get
help
all
each other.
political, but I'm just trying to think in terms of this idea of being able to, you know, this is the most powerful gift we have, which is which is our voice, words.
And
right?
we help each other conceptualize the world better. But that requires a theme that we've heard from many guests, that requires listening to each other, that requires being open to each other. And the people who won't listen, or if they do listen, don't really hear because they're not open. They're not able to let others help them conceptualize the world better. And that's one thing I see in you, Joseph, that you pick, it's almost like there's something from every guest. And Wesley, I've been involved since I was a guest about 2 months ago. I've been involved in the show and the after show. And I see Joseph picking something, remembering something from every guest that becomes part of his vocabulary, that becomes an expanded way he experiences the world and subsequent guests. And that's a man who can learn. That's a man who has an open heart and an open mind. And so you rightly say, Joseph, that when we don't have that openness to others, we impoverish ourselves in our ability to understand and see paths forward that we wouldn't be able to see without each other.
You know, I think sometimes the responsibility is on ourselves and how we ask the question. You know, I think that I found myself asking my children, how was their day? But I really wasn't asking the question. I was just making noise. And so I have to ask a better question than that. Like, hey, you know, when you were at school today, what was the most frustrating thing that you had? What happened to you that pissed you off? You know, or what was the most, did you have any wild ideas when you were coloring? You know, like there's nothing rich about the automation of my questions.
Right. It's caveman talk. You know, we just kind of grunt at each other.
So when people ask me, so how was your day yesterday? I always think of that. I go, really? That's the best you got for me?
Yeah.
Jeez, I got to be more careful. I got to be more careful.
Yes, Mr. Rubin?
Joseph, I don't necessarily disagree with what you said, so I didn't have to hold my ears.
All right.
But what I would like to mention to Wesley is 15, 16 years ago, my wife and I started a program called Respect, which you might remember. And it was special needs children of all kinds. And it was through sports that we made them feel part of the society. And it was, we weren't philosophers, we weren't psychologists, but it was a form of teaching kids that they're really part of a Special Olympics. They're really part of the world. So my question to Wesley is, have you thought of working with children?
I have worked with children. I was a mentor at a middle school for a long period of time. I got mentor of the year, like top 10 for the district. So I've worked with children. I also used to take care of like the daycare of a church with children. I have 2 of my own. So yes, I've worked with children. But
did you work with children with special needs?
Not that were identified. So it's hard to know by looking, but not that were identified specifically.
Good point.
Because you usually can recognize that they're somewhere on the spectrum.
Possibly, maybe. Sometimes I've talked to adults who are just finding out that they are on the spectrum, depending on what you're talking about. I think that it's not easily discerned, not even for the person themselves. For instance, I'm not sure how many people would realize about my own difficulties from having a conversation with me, or even people who I've worked with. People who I posted this post on LinkedIn, and I've had people said I had no idea, and it's not easy. You can't just always tell. But also because of my own position, I do have the ADHD part means that I have some executive functioning problems. And so means that I do have less time just in general because everything takes me longer. And then you add that into some tasks that might be more reading and writing, and that is also another task that takes an extraordinary amount of time on top of the not being able to focus. And so I'm not a fully reliable person just in general, and I realize that. And so I have to schedule everything. And I've also noticed that when I've worked with kids, that's something that I can't do, is let them down. So if it's not built into a structure that rises it into prominence, like for instance, if it's part of my job or it's part of my home life, then that's something that in order to catch up might fall off, and that's just not fair to kids.
Look, I'll say one thing, which is so interesting. You know, there are two aspects, you know, and I've said this to many guests, Wesley, which is there are people. I'll give Chris Brogan as an example. Chris, of course, I know Chris Brogan. Everyone knows Chris Brogan.
I know Chris Brogan. Yeah.
Right. Been at 1,000 functions and events, whatever, but we never spent more than 5 minutes talking to one another. Mm-hmm. I didn't know who he was, but you know, I'd probably call him a friend, you know, and then through CoronaTV, I get to sit down for, you know, upwards of an hour and a half, including the time in the green room, with people and really, really get to know them and get to know things about them that I had no idea. Maybe because they'd never shared it with me, maybe because I'd never asked, or maybe because they just didn't. It never came up. You know, from even the silly fun facts. There's nothing silly about them. You learn so much about them, about people. And sometimes it might be a bonding thing like intermittent fasting. I could talk to you for an hour on that because how I tried it and it didn't really work for me. And my longest fast was 65 hours and, you know, and what I'm doing now. But that is yet another thing we have in common, as if we didn't have enough in common, which we do, right? But the other part of it is just learning more about people. And I guess the point, the only other thing I'll kind of offer up is sometimes we're only going to find out these things about people, like your struggle, right? By that person being gracious enough to volunteer that through a blog post or a tweet or whatever the case may be. And sometimes it's incumbent upon ourselves to take the time to listen, to learn, to ask questions, you know, to provide that, to have enough patience and wait to get to know someone. And that's why this show's been amazing, because, you know, the Wesley Faulkner I knew coming into the show is very different to the one I know now. And it's only a good thing.
Yeah, good.
Really, that different?
Well, no, I didn't say very different.
Okay,
I said
just
different.
a little different. Okay, yes.
But
I do feel that this experience has been
better.
additive, definitely additive.
Oh, good.
No, without question, additive. Yeah. But you and I have always had these intense, you know, meaningful conversations. And you know, but definitely, I mean, how could I not have learned more about you? I learned more about myself on today's show. You know, you learned more about me. That's Bob's point, I think, at the beginning. It's like a game of chess, by the way. And by the way, I noticed, and I didn't even realize, that 2 of my soliloquies this week have had chess pieces on them.
Interesting.
And I'm busy watching The Queen's Gambit on Netflix right now. And so I don't know what deep, but the thing about chess is no 2 games are the same. And it is unbelievable. It's unbelievable how with so few openings and so few, you think it's just, I'm being ADD now with you guys. I don't even know what my point is, but I just.
But to bring us back, you did tease that I would answer questions or learn more about. Should we cover those before time runs out? Because I noticed that we're at the 30-minute mark. Or is that just hooey?
What the intermittent fasting thing?
No, or that, or like my pet peeve of like.
Yeah, you listen. I told you, it's your show. So, I just get to host it.
I don't like communal like things. Like if you have a bag of chips and people stick their hands in it, I'd rather take the bag of chips, pour it into a bowl, and here, this is for you. Don't just like reach around and fill everything that you're not going to take and touch my stuff. You touch your food, I touch my food. That's the rule. And so
that was pre-pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. You know who does love sticking? Who does love that act? COVID loves.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. I got to say this because you used a metaphor earlier, Wesley, that I love about where a person is along a spectrum. And usually when we use that word these days, we're talking about something like Asperger's or autism or something. But I've come to think more and more, the older I get, that we're all somewhere on many spectrums.
Oh, yeah.
And that I love the metaphor of a spectrum to explain so many things in human life, right? Because we have all these contrastive adjectives. Is he an honest person or is he a dishonest person? Well, maybe he's somewhere on the spectrum, right? It's just not 2 polarities. And we talk in terms of polarities all the time, whereas there's almost always a spectrum. And until we can kind of realize that nuance, we're not really able to understand either other people or ourselves as well as we should. So I'm glad you brought that up, that it's hard to tell where somebody is on, it depends on where they are on the spectrum. I'm thinking, yeah, that's true of us all about so many things.
Well, I mean, by literal definition, the spectrum is from one side to the other, right? So we're all on the spectrum, but it is such probably a negative thing, to even have that phrase, she's on the spectrum. We need to with all these marketing minds on this after show, we need to think about a smarter, better, more.
Well, it's been co-opted, right? Like the term has been co-opted to mean something positive, negative.
Does that mean
negative, right?
By asking that, does that mean that the questioner is off the spectrum?
Everyone's on the spectrum.
No,
they're off the reservation.
Yeah, how would you be off?
Right.
Hey, Wesley, when you're in an environment, let's say it's a party, and the host is bringing out that bag of snacks that you love, and they open up the bag, are you in a position of asking out loud or even authoring the idea that we ought not put our hands in that bag? Or
you all do whatever you want. That I will either choose not to have any of it.
Not to have any of it. Does that kind of irk you that you're now removed from being able to participate in that bag of snacks that you like because of
Only
that?
if it's Cheetos.
I think that I feel when I'm in someone else's environment, they can do what they wish. It's my own environment where I can control that.
And this is how Corona TV goes from one end of the spectrum, from sublime to the other end, which is ridiculous. I will leave you today. I'm giving you guys an extra 5 minutes, but I will leave you today. I saw a video, ironically, probably on Facebook, but it could have been on any of the socials, that says, can you imagine if we left parties the way that we leave Facebook? And it's just a video. It's like at this whole party, and then this person goes, everybody gather around. I have an announcement to make. I've decided that I will be leaving this party imminently. It is time to move on. I don't know if I'll be back tonight, but I was just laughing hysterically at how ridiculous we are when we decide to make these grand proclamations of I'm leaving the party because somebody stuck their hand into the cookie jar. Sincerely, Wesley Faulkner, Esquire.
You're all stupid. You're all crazy. And you could just have this party by yourself. I'm out.
Yeah.
No, I would never do that. Never do that.
All right. Well, guys, back tomorrow with Moshe Engelberg talking about love. And thanks all of you for your love today, and Wesley, especially to you. See you guys. Yeah, it's been real fun. I'll see you guys. I'll stop the record. Wait a second. Did you show your notes to Wesley?
Oh,